Hi, everyone. We are going to get started here in just a moment. I just want to make sure that all of our tech is working correctly. Had a little bit of an issue getting started here, but I think we are ready to go. So let me just check on my other monitor and make sure that I can see us. Um, and then we'll get started. I would love in the chat if you can just give me a thumbs up or something to let me know that you can see me, hear me. That would be super, super helpful. Let me just check and make sure we are actually on YouTube. I'm kind of new to this whole multi-streaming thing where I'm live on multiple places at once, but okay, it's working, it looks like. I think there's a delay with the comments, but let's give everyone a few minutes to join us. And I just want to tell you a little bit about what we are going to cover today. I have a ton of notes, so I'm going to bring them up here for myself. And then we'll get started. First of all, because I am a researcher and an experience designer, I would love to hear a little bit more about who is with us today. So if in the chat you can put in where you're from and what you do in the world of user experience or product design. I would love to hear what you're up to. Are you currently working? Are you studying? So let me know in the chat so I can get to know you. And in theory, I should be able to see all of our comments coming in here. Okay, yeah, great. So it looks like we have people from all over, which is awesome. I think I see San Francisco. I see people from New York. I see Atlanta and Seattle and London, it looks like. Awesome. So we have people from all over, which is great. And my next question was, what do you do within the world of user experience? And I'm just waiting to see some of your answers come in. So let's see. In theory, your answers, yes, okay. I'm using this new tool and it brings in all of the chats from Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube all into one place, which is super, super helpful for me. So, what do you do within the world of user experience? Okay, it looks like we have people who are researchers, a lot of researchers, experience designers, product designers, interface designers, UX writers, okay? So we cover product managers, yep, great. So we are all over the place. We've got it covered. If we were to launch our own product design agency, we would have everything covered, which is awesome. So nice to get to know you a little bit. But in case we have not met yet, my name is Sarah Doody, and as I said, I'm a researcher and experience designer, and I also am a founder. I have created various UX education programs and I guess what you could call career coaching programs, although I don't like that term very much for many different reasons. But I'm kind of come to accept it that it's the easiest way to describe who I am and what I do. And before we dive into today's topic, which is the number one thing that is holding you back in your job search right now, I want to let you know that I am launching a career coaching accelerator. This is focused on people who are in the journey to get their next role. So this is not a UX bootcamp. I'm not teaching you how to do research. I'm not teaching you how to do, UX. It's not a bootcamp. This is an accelerator for people who are on the journey to get their next role. So that accelerator is called the Career Strategy Lab. And if you want to learn more about that, I am hosting another training on June 3rd. So 2 weeks, a week from Thursday. So what you want to do is go to careerstrategylab.com to fill out an application. And then if it seems like you're a good fit to work with us, I will send you all the details and a link to join us for that training happening on Thursday, June 3rd. So that's what's happening in the next couple of weeks. Let's get started though, because I want to keep this to about 30 minutes. So I said the number one question, or the question we're going to answer today is, what is the number one thing that is holding you back in your job search? So I would love to know, what do you feel like is holding you back in your job search right now? And I want to hop back to my chat so I can see here. Whoops, got to go back over here. Forgot to put my headphones in so we don't get any feedback. I'm going to read your answers in just a moment. Over to the chat and see what you all are saying. I also just want to confirm that you can hear me. I would have imagined someone would have said you can't. Okay, good. We're all good. Cool. So when it comes to your number one job struggle and what you feel like is holding you back in your job search, I have two monitors here, so I'm all over the place, but I want to see what you guys are saying. Okay, I'm seeing many common things. Companies are ghosting you, okay? So lack of experience is another one. Experience is coming up quite a lot. It's been a busy morning here. Okay, portfolio is holding you back, so you're not confident in your portfolio. Crystal says, deciding whether I'm at an intern level or ready for a full-time role. Okay, good question. Let's see what else you guys have in terms of what you think is holding you back. Looks like we have some comments coming in from elsewhere. So your resume, you're not confident in your resume, so you don't want to apply and then maybe not make a good first impression. Totally makes sense. You are not sure where to find jobs. Yep, totally makes sense as well. Where to find jobs. There are so many places, and one of the pieces of feedback I get from people is that you're honestly just overwhelmed with knowing what jobs to even apply to, right? Okay, that makes sense as well. Not getting feedback about your portfolio, your resume, etc. Getting your foot in the door. A lot of you are saying you're applying, but you're not getting that opportunity to do interviews. So how do you go from applying to actually getting those interviews? Okay. What else do we have here? I'm just scrolling through the answers here. If you're joining us, I asked everyone, what do you feel like is the number one thing that's holding you back in your job search right now? Time. Yeah, time is another huge one, right? You can't find the time to be doing all the things you feel like you need to do to be ready to apply. Let's see. Okay, a couple of you have said poorly written job descriptions. So you're saying, all these companies that say they want to hire UX people, the job descriptions are all over the place. You're not even wanting to apply because you're not sure what you're applying to. Can anyone relate to that? Okay. What else do we have? Not getting the interview is key. Self-confidence is coming up quite a bit as well. I see another vote for time. Okay. A couple of you are saying not knowing where you fit in the world of user experience. Maybe you are more on the side of being a career, what I call a career climber, someone who's been working in UX for a while and you are trying to get that next role, get to that next level. Maybe you want to do management, etc. But part of your challenge is when you started in this field, you maybe were more of a generalist and now you're trying to decide, Should I continue down that path? Do companies want that? Should I specialize? Like, who am I? That's where you're at. Okay. Interviews, being scared of the interviews. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to ask that question because I know many of you are struggling with your job search, and all of these things are totally valid, right? Time, resume, portfolio, not hearing back after you apply, not getting past the first interview, etc. But there's one thing that I believe is the number one thing that's holding you back in your job search. And a few of you mentioned this, but I wanted to hold off and wait until I made the big reveal here. The number one thing that I think is holding you back in your job search, it's you. It's totally you. I receive so many emails and I receive so many messages from people who say that they are struggling to overcome confidence and those feelings of, am I good enough? Should I even apply? What if I apply and then they find out I'm not the type of person they're looking for, right? This idea of imposter syndrome and confidence and you doubting yourself, that is also a large piece of it. And I hear this over and over and over from people. And what do I mean by this? I mean, what's really holding you back is like this doubt that you have. And it's almost as though you are stuck in this quicksand. And once you dip your toe in the quicksand of doubt and imposter syndrome, you just get sucked up and you end up wallowing in it. And the other problem is that what happens when you get stuck in this quicksand of imposter syndrome? I want to go back to the chat because I lost the window. I have so many windows open right now. Where did it go? Oh, goodness. It was here. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yes. A lot of you are saying, totally agree. That's me. Yes. The imposter syndrome and confidence thing, right? So when you start to go down that path and start to go towards that quicksand of doubt, confidence, etc., that is problematic because then you get trapped in the cycle of trying to find a silver bullet or a magic answer, that one tweet or that one article or that one YouTube video that's going to tell you exactly what you need to do. Are any of you guilty of this, right? Where you, instead of sitting down to actually work on your resume or work on your portfolio or do something, instead of opening up Keynote or Word or whatever you're doing all this in, what do? You open up a browser tab and you go to Google, and then you spend hours searching for things like, how do I make a resume? How do I make the perfect portfolio? How do I make the perfect blank? How do I crack the perfect interview, etc.? Who can relate to this? I know many of you do this because I have done my research. Seriously, I have been researching the world of UX careers, getting hired in UX portfolios, UX resumes, etc. for the last 4 years. I have seen it and heard it all. And I know that probably this weekend, many of you went to Google and did, how do I make the perfect fill in the blank, right? Okay, so I know I'm on the right track because many of you are agreeing with me in the chat. So let's continue on with our little research project on you and how you are approaching the job search. So we know that you are struggling, and we know that one thing that's really holding you back, maybe under the surface, is this confidence imposter thing. And what do we know does not work? Google. It doesn't work to try and go find this silver bullet, right? Someone said it's a vicious cycle. Yeah, I always say it's like a hamster wheel. You're just on the hamster wheel of research over and over and over. And then what happens when you do that? When you spend all your time in research mode, you are not actually working on your resume or your job search or your this or your that. So then what happens? Well, then you end up needing to rush it all, right? Who can relate to this? You spend so much time in research mode that then you end up needing to rush everything. Who's had this happen to them? I know I already saw it in the chat. Okay, we're seeing a lot of agreements. Yes, I was rushing this weekend, etc. Exactly. So I want you to remember that when you get stuck in research mode, the byproduct of that is that you end up rushing everything. And then what happens when you rush everything is that you make mistakes. You don't think through the actual, for example, content of your resume, and you just kind of throw it together and write these bullet points really quickly, or you cut and paste them from your LinkedIn or some old resume from 4 years ago, or you Google other people's resumes and then try and like reverse engineer theirs, and you end up making a lot of mistakes. So research leads to rushing, leads to mistakes. So we don't want to do that, because that is not productive. And then what happens when you make mistakes? You either know you made the mistake or you don't know. But the underlying thing is that that's where you end up with those confidence and imposter syndrome issues, because you really know this probably isn't what it could be because I rushed it, because I spent so much time in research mode, right? So what we want to do is figure out, how do you prevent yourself from getting stuck in this research mode, getting stuck on this hamster wheel, rushing everything, making all these mistakes, which lead to these confidence issues because you're thinking, oh my gosh, this isn't good enough. I don't know this. I don't know that. How do we put an end to that? Does anyone have any guesses? I want to check in the chat here. Many of you are saying, yes, this is me. I'm an overthinker. Exactly. And the underlying, I guess, ironic thing here is that in doing all this, what you're really doing is you're not UXing your own job search and your own career, which I find so ironic, because we do this all day long for the products we work on, right? We spend all this time, we do research, and then we think to ourselves, what do we learn from this research? Let me figure things out. And then we move on to the next step and the next step, depending on what the project is, right? But you don't always do that for your career. A lot of times you're just rushing right into, high fidelity design, to go along with my analogy, right? So you rush and you go right to the design of your resume, and then you didn't end up thinking about the strategy of it and the content. Same thing for your portfolio, right? Even same thing with your job search, where it comes down to finding a role and you're not being strategic about it. And instead, you're just going to Indeed and LinkedIn and all these places, and you're just hitting apply, 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 apply. But you're not applying using, I guess we could say, like a lens or filter based on the strategy you've developed for your career. Does this make sense? This analogy between your job search and the need to apply UX to it? And how many of you are thinking to yourself, she has a point. It is pretty ironic that we do this for our clients and our jobs and everything else all day long. And when it comes to me and my career, I can't say I did much research, or I can't say I didn't do much strategy, right? I say this really as a reality check, because I want to kind of change how you're thinking about all this. Because when you change how you're thinking about this whole thing, it's going to make it a lot easier. And the other thing, when you have a process to follow, meaning when in the back of your mind, or hopefully in the front of your mind, you're thinking about the UX process as it relates to your job search, then you're going to be more confident because you're going to have steps to follow. And when you have steps to follow and kind of a method, it takes some of the emotion out of it, and it makes it just a little bit more subjective. And I'm going to do this, now I'm going to do this, now I'm going to do this. It's kind of like training wheels on a bicycle, right? Remember, if you learned to ride a bike, your bike had training wheels. that gives you the confidence, because if you were just thrown on a bike with no training wheels, it doesn't end well, probably for most people. Okay, cool. So this is making sense for people. I am glad to hear it. So I want to just recap really quickly, but I just want to do a quick time check. Okay, so recap, in case you're joining us. We talked about how so many of us are struggling in the job search. And when you struggle, when you don't know what to do, what do you revert to? You revert to research. And when you spend all your time researching, what happens? You procrastinate. And you have this false sense of momentum where you think, wow, I just spent, 2 hours last night reading Medium articles. But then you wake up in the morning and you think, but I still don't have a resume. So when you research, you procrastinate, which then leads to rushing, which then leads to mistakes, which then leads to these confidence issues you're encountering. So we need to put an end to this because it's not productive. And to do that, we need to apply our UX process, product development process principles to the parts of our career and job search and resume and everything that makes sense. So the one big takeaway that I want us to have is that instead of getting stuck in this research mode and being what I call an advice seeker, I want you to focus on becoming an action taker. Because as someone who is asked for advice all the time, part of the challenge is I think so many people are spending way too much time on this advice-seeking mission. But think back maybe to the last 2, 3, 4 times you've asked for advice, whether or not you emailed someone or messaged them on LinkedIn or you went and asked Google. What was the quality of advice that you got back? I'm curious. So let's have a little conversation here. When you are in this research mode, are you getting quality advice? Let me know in the chat. Meaning, after you read that article or watch that video or something, are you left thinking, okay, I've got this, I can go do this thing? Or are you thinking, they told me to do this, but I still don't know how to do that. For example, they told me I need to tell the story of my projects in my portfolio, but I still don't know how to do that. So then you end up going to Google and saying, how do I tell the story of my projects in my portfolio? And then what happens? You end up with a million more articles, or same thing. How do I write an effective resume? How do I write an outcomes-oriented resume? They tell you to write an outcome-oriented resume, but do they tell you how to do that? Probably not, right? Okay, I'm going to check in the chat here. Yes, okay, I'm seeing a lot of you saying yes, yes. Right. Exactly. A lot of the content out there is, honestly, to be blunt, just really surface level. It's very, very just kind of vague and not how-to oriented. People love to tell you what to do, but telling you how to do it, that sometimes takes a different person. So I want you to think about every time you ask for advice and think about all that time that you spend asking for advice, is it really resulting in actionable things you can do? Okay, so back to my outline. Who is thinking to themselves now that I need to make a shift from being an advice seeker to an action taker? Let me know in the chat. Because in my opinion, the advice, it gives you this false sense of progress, right? It leaves you wondering, how do I do that? So I want to give you 3 really, really practical tips, because I said I'm not just going to tell you what to do, I'm going to tell you how to do it. I want to, and you can hold me to that, because I really, really try and make a point of making everything I do, whether it's a live like this or a talk at a company or an article, I really strive to make everything very action oriented. So here is your action for today. How to become an action taker. There's three things. So make sure you write these down. Okay. Thing number one is, instead of looking for tips, you want to be looking for tactics, meaning tips are surface level. Tactics are the real how. Tactics are like the plan, right? So tips are kind of like if you're into cooking, I don't know why I'm now onto cooking in this talk we're doing right now, but I think it's a good analogy. So you often go see all these beautiful recipe photos or things to cook on Instagram or Pinterest and stuff like that. And there's a lot of tips, but the actual tactics of like how to do that, they're often not always there or easy to find. So we want to shift from looking for tips to actual tactics. And this is a really good thing to do, especially when you're reaching out to people. Because when I receive emails that say, do you have any advice for how to write an effective resume? Well, that's really vague, right? It's just such a broad topic. Whereas if you ask, so takeaway here, stop asking people for tips and start asking them for tactics. Meaning, if we go with that resume example, instead of saying, do you have any tips for my resume? You could say, do you have any strategies for how to write more effective bullet points on a resume? So if you want to be an action taker, you have to be more strategic with what you ask of people, whether you're asking a person or you're asking Google. Does that make sense? The tips versus tactics thing? Because the tactics are going to tell you the how to. And like I said, this is super important to remember when you are asking people over email or DM or whatever for help with whatever you're doing, your resume, your job search, etc. So action takers focus on tactics rather than tips. Because tips, honestly, I should have made a diagram, but tips are like the tip of the iceberg, right? Tactics are like everything else below it. And that's what you need. That's what you're not getting right now. Okay, the next thing that action takers do is the following. They stop operating as a solo and they start operating as a squad. So we want to stop being solo and start being more of a squad. Okay, by that I mean so many of you are operating alone in a silo, and what you're doing is you're getting stuck in your own head. When you're just working alone on your resume, on your portfolio, on your LinkedIn, preparing for interviews and stuff like that, you far more quickly start to let that doubt creep in because you are operating alone and you're in this little bubble, right? So what we want to do is stop doing that. And you want to find a squad, meaning a small group of people to kind of go on this journey together. And I really emphasize this small group squad component because just joining a LinkedIn group with 10,000 people, that's probably not going to be the most effective thing to do because guess what's going to happen? You're probably just going to end up being bombarded with vague tips, random articles people post, links to videos that someone made that they want to promote and stuff like that. So when I say solo and we instead want to be operating as a squad, a squad does not mean a stadium of like 10,000, 20,000 people in some group on LinkedIn or Slack or whatever. So you need to think about who do you want on your squad as you go through your journey to getting your next role. So who is now thinking to themselves, I've been going at this all alone, solo, and yeah, I can see how maybe that has allowed imposter syndrome or perfectionism to creep in. And yeah, I probably do need some type of squad or small group of people. Let me know in the chat. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of messages here. Exactly. Someone said, It seems like you're reading my mind. I have done my research. Yes. Okay. So we want to stop operating in a silo and start operating more as a squad. Okay. The third thing we need to do to become more of an action taker is stop being very casual about the whole job search or whatever you're trying to do. Stop being casual and start making a calendar. Okay. So by casual, I mean so often when people are working on their job search, their resume, their whatever, they don't have a project plan, right? Imagine if in your job right now or in your school that you're going to or something, you didn't have a calendar. You didn't have dates and deadlines and milestones and things like that. And you just worked on it when you felt like it. Like your boss would not like that. You need a calendar, right? But when it comes to your job search and your resume and everything else, all your side projects and things, so many people just do it in this mindset of, oh, I'll work on it when I feel like it. Well, that's not going to get you to the finish line. You need a calendar. So what we need to do is be more intentional, make a project plan for your job search, for your career, etc. So to recap, these 3 things that we need to do to be more of an action taker are, number 1, focus less on tips and more on tactics, because tips are the tip of the iceberg. Tactics is everything else below the surface. Tactics is the how, okay? Next is we need to stop operating in a solo silo. Why? Because that imposter syndrome and doubt and all that stuff, that's when that creeps in, because you're in a bubble and you're only listening to your own voice and thoughts. You need to find a small squad of people, not a stadium of 10,000 people in a LinkedIn group, a small group of people you can really collaborate, help critique, get feedback, strategize, etc. And then the third thing we need to do is stop approaching this whole thing from a very casual approach and instead be more strategic with a calendar, etc. Okay, so who is thinking to themselves, I got it. I need to stop being an advice seeker and start being more of an action taker? Who's going to leave here today and try and be more of an action taker in all of these things? And hopefully, as I said, you can use these 3 action taker tips I did at the end to, let's see what's going on with our internet. All right, I think we're still live. Please hold while I find out what's going on with the video. Okay, I think we're still live. We might be frozen. I'm going to plug my computer in and see if it helps. Please hold. Okay, we're back. Whew. Are we back? We're back. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Little glitch here, but we're back, I think. Oh, goodness. You got to love technology, right? Want to be more of an action taker. So, things I want to like we're having some tech issues here. I think we're good. We are. Okay, we're back, everyone. I want to take a few minutes to try and answer some questions. So I'm going to pop back over to YouTube, wherever that window went. As I said, I'm kind of new to live streaming and all this. Okay, so Thank you, Kim, for doing the wonderful summaries in the chat. I really appreciate it. And sorry for all those little quirks with the video, but here's the thing. Anyone have any questions? I'll take 3 questions. So let me see which come up. I know that we may have a little bit of a delay. So let's see here. All right. We're still looking for the questions. Okay. I see a question coming in from, I'm not sure where, because I'm seeing the question from everywhere, but someone said, when it comes to this idea of operating solo versus with a squad, where do I find these people and who should I think would be a good person to be in my squad? So here's the thing. You want to make sure that these people are kind of qualified to give you feedback and guidance. So, for example, you don't probably want to have like a random friend be a part of this squad, especially if they do not have experience with things like user experience, for example. Because if you have someone looking at your portfolio or your resume, for example, you want them to have a bit of context about who you are and what you do. So I think you need some type of person that understands your industry or niche, etc. Okay? I think you also could have someone who maybe doesn't work in your industry, but you know they're a really great writer or they're a great speaker or something like that. They'd probably be someone helpful to have on your squad because they might be able to help you with things like preparing for interviews or proofreading or things like that. A lot of times people say, but maybe I shouldn't have other UX designers or UX writers or things like that because you're worried that you'll kind of be competing with each other. And as someone who has run communities as big as 10,000 people, and some more smaller but more intimate ones for people in their job search and things like that, I can tell you that it is not competitive because you are all working towards the same goal. So I wouldn't be worried about having other people and having it be competitive, if that makes sense. Let's see. Okay, that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, what's a realistic job search timeline? Okay, good question. My answer is it depends. I know that's not the answer you want to hear, but it really, really depends on where you're at in the journey so far. The thing that I will say is I think most people underestimate the time it takes to get all of their career assets ready. Meaning, in the case of UX and product, some type of portfolio, a resume, your LinkedIn, which people often neglect. You probably want to spend some time in advance preparing some kind of default email scripts and cover letters and things like that that you can kind of remix for different roles you apply to. And then most important of all, you want to spend some time, like we did in the beginning here, doing some research on you to help identify, as some of you said in the beginning, what do you want to do in the world of user experience or product development in the future? Where do you want to be in your career 2 years, 3 years from now? Because that will probably inform the type of roles that you want to apply to. Because if you want to be a design system manager or something like that 2-3 years from now, okay, you better start working on design systems and get some smaller management experience between now and then, right? So you're qualified to be applying for those roles. Okay, let's see. One more question here. Someone else said, okay, what do I do if I have worked in a previous field and I'm kind of a career switcher? How do I handle that previous experience and where do you account for it? Can you put it in your resume and your portfolio? So the 2-part answer here. Answer number 1 is Your resume and your LinkedIn are going to be the best places to highlight your previous experience in whatever field. Let's pretend it was journalism or something like that, okay? So that's where you're going to be able to highlight the transferable skills from that period of your career over to what you're going to do in the future in your UX role. When it comes to your portfolio, you have to think about it like this. If your portfolio is full of all different types of projects, like some journalism projects and graphic design, because you used to do that, and some user experience stuff, well, guess what? It kind of dilutes the UX projects that are in your portfolio. And it kind of takes the focus off of those projects. So as a rule of thumb, I want the portfolio to be relevant to your UX projects and not cluttered with anything else. Put other stuff in your resume, your LinkedIn. Okay, those are our 3 questions, and that's all we have time for today. But I am on a bit of a roll with this live stream stuff, and thank you for your patience as I fix some of the tech stuff here. I think I need to put my phone in airplane mode next time so I don't get notifications. Maybe that's why it's pausing our video here. But thank you so much. And don't forget that, as I mentioned in the beginning, I am doing a 90-minute to 2-hour long private training that's going to go into a really deep dive around what you can do to really be ready to apply at a moment's notice and be ready to land your hopefully dream job a lot sooner than you think. I'm going to be teaching that on June 3rd to people who apply to be a part of my career strategy lab, which is my job search accelerator for UX and product people. So if you are curious about that or thinking that training might be helpful, head on over to careerstrategylab.com. I will put it in the chat. I think I can type in my own chat. Who knows? careerstrategylab.com. And we will review all the applications and, hold on. I can't type. Going live and doing all this at the same time is hard. Okay, there it is in the chat. Like I said, happening June 3rd for people who apply, and we accept to learn more about this program because we can only take a limited number of people. But here's the thing. Come back, same time, same place on YouTube or wherever else you're watching on Thursday, May 27, 1 o'clock Eastern. I will be doing another live stream on the topic of your UX job search. So thank you all for coming. I look forward to reading the chat after. And don't forget to apply by June 2nd because that training is on June 3rd. So thank you. Hope you found this helpful. Go off and be action takers so you can stop getting in your own way and stop procrastinating and put a stop to a lot of this perfectionism and imposter syndrome thinking, because when you're stuck in research mode, that's when all that creeps in. And if you want to kind of push that all down, you just have to start taking action. So go off and be action takers, and I will hopefully talk to you on Thursday. Bye, everyone.